Hello everyone and welcome to the last session of Introduction to DBMS and SQL. So today it's all about the practical. So whatever we have learned some practical knowledge and some theoretical knowledge, and today we will be actually putting that knowledge to good use, where we will actually create a very small application on the databases that we have built. Now, before we go there, a quick reminder that this course is being brought to you by the Launchpad initiative of Newton School. So the link to Newton School's website has been given on the description section of the video. So please feel free to go ahead and check that out. So the course that you are seeing right now, you can also register for that particular course from Newton School. So for registering for that course, you need to come to the Newton School's website, log in or sign up, depending on whether you're an existing user or a new user. Once you're signed up, you will be redirected to your dashboard. In the dashboard, under the Launchpad tracks, search for the course, the Complete Database Management and SQL course for beginners. Once you've applied for the course will come up in the Your Tracks section, where you can monitor the progress that you have made for this particular course. The advantage that you get by registering for the course from Newton School is that you will be eligible for a certificate once you've viewed all the lectures. And also, along with the free video lectures on YouTube, you will also be getting daily quizzes and assignments, which can help you track your progress. Also, there will be a discussion forum where, in case you have any doubts, you can post your doubts there. All right. So without much further delay, let us go ahead and get started. So yeah, today we'll be delving into practicalities of whatever we have learned in SQL. And before we go that, in the last video we saw about indexing. So just to give you everyone a quick refresher. So indexing, we learned about clustered indexing and about non-clustered indexing, where we saw that how when you are actually creating a table, automatically a clustered index and everything gets created, and then it gets created on the primary key actually, and then how you can actually use that indexing to speed up your queries. Like, for example, if you're searching for the departments, then if you have indexed the department column here, then automatically that becomes the index table gets created here. This is a non-clustered index again, and index table gets created for the department columns, and then from the index table you have got pointers back into the actual data table. So we'll continue on this. We'll do some practical knowledge there. So before we go with the practical knowledge there, one thing that I would like to introduce you to is Microsoft SQL Server. So this is something which right in the first video we had seen. So this is an Azure portal. Let me increase the font a little bit. Yeah. So this is what is now Azure portal. So Azure is the public cloud offering from Microsoft. So here you can actually go ahead and create your virtual machines, your app services, and other stuff like that, which you can use. So this is my personal subscription, and in this subscription I have created a SQL Server. And this SQL Server, I've created a database. This is the name of the database, Demo SQL Live DB. And what I'm going to be doing here is that for today's example, so till now, whatever data or whatever SQL Server we were seeing it in the Newton School Editor Playground, which was actually kind of a embedded SQL. It was SQL Lite. But when you're actually going into the practical world, in a lot of situations, you will be using databases which are hosted on some other server and not directly embedded in your website. So in Newton School's website, whatever we saw, that was an embedded database. SQL Lite is actually a very lightweight version of SQL, which you can embed in a website. But if you're going ahead and building enterprise application, which is going to contain, let's say, terabytes and petabytes of data, then it is not possible to always embed the database in a website and use it. You might need to host your database on some other server, something like what Oracle offers, or what Microsoft offers, or what AWS offers. So here what I've done is so here you can assume that if you do not have a lot of knowledge about what cloud computing is or what Azure is, then bear with me for some time. You don't need to have a very thorough knowledge about it. All that you need to know is that Azure provides you some virtual machines where you can host your databases, and then you can connect your databases from your client machine. You can connect to the database. So here I've created this database, and there is a particular tool called Azure Data Studio. So this is a tool that I'm showing right now. So using this particular tool, you can connect to databases which are hosted on different servers and on different servers or on different locations. You can connect to the SQL databases, and then you can query on it. So for now, the database that I have created here, I have given some basic tables. Like there is something known as an adventure DB. So Adventure DB is a sample database which if you're learning about SQL and you want to learn about things like how to do multi joins and how to do queries and everything, then Adventure SQL comes up with a lot of sample data sets which you can use. It's a very popular database in the in the enterprise world actually, especially if you're trying to learn. So in this database, this is demo SQL Live DB. I have actually installed the sample database, this Adventure DB that I'm talking about. So once you have come into Azure Data Studio, here I'm already connected, but there might be a situation where you're not connected. In case of that, you can actually click on the connection button here. Right now, I don't have the connection button because I'm already connected. But let me click on change connection to show you exactly what I mean. So when you click on change connection, you see that here you get to see, you have to give the details. So here you are trying to connect to Microsoft SQL Server. That is the connection type that you give. The server and the authentication type, where do you get them from? So the best place to get them from is to go to the database that you have and here search for the connection strings. So here I get the connection string here. So if you look for the connection string here you get to see what is the name of the SQL Server. So the name of the SQL Server is this. Let me highlight that here. Demo SQL line or database.windows.net. So this is a SQL Server. So that is the SQL Server I've given here. Then it is asking me how do I want to log in. So when you're actually logging in into something like a SQL, there are multiple ways to do it. You have got SQL login, that is you maintain the username and the password on the database itself. That is in the database that you're trying to connect, there itself you've got the username and the password there. And as and when more people come, you give them a new username and a new password and they all will be able to connect. So that is on the SQL login. There is another form of login which is known as Windows authentication. So what Windows authentication is going to do is, so using the username that you have logged in into your Windows operating system. So right now I'm using a Windows 10 operating system. So so whatever username that I'm connected to that, whatever username I've given to the particular Windows 10, it is going to fetch the login in details from there. Another one is Azure Active Directory with MFA support. So that is another form of logging in where Active Directory, where you can use Active Directory to log in as well. I'm not going to go into very details about all those. So if you're giving SQL login, you need to give the username and the password. So the username and the password. So if you're in the Azure portal, you can go ahead and create a username and password. So I'll not again show the details of it, how exactly you can go ahead and create it. So interested people, you can go ahead and read about it, that once you create a database SQL server on Azure, how to generate username and password. So I've given my username and password. Then the name of the database is this demo SQL Live DB. Using that, if you click on connect, you get created. You get connected. So here I'm not again doing connect because I am already connected to it. So let me just show you a couple of queries there. Now, people who want to read about Now, people who want to read about the Adventure DB. So Adventure DB is kind of an open source database, you can say, which is already available in the market. So from there, you will get to know what are all the names of all the tables and everything that is present here. So yeah, another thing that interesting that you could see here is about so if I get sales LT dot, it is automatically giving me, okay, what are the tables which are present here. Now, when you are actually let me go ahead and run this query. So I pressed F5. F5 is equivalent to running a particular query. So here I get back the result. Now, one thing quickly to note here is about, so we already know about select top from and okay, top we did not know so far. So in SQLite, we're using a command called limit. Now, the limit command does not exist in SQL Server. So that is what I was saying, that based on the vendor that you're using, but based on the SQL version you're using, there will be little differences in the syntaxes. So in SQL Server, you don't have a thing called limit. Rather, you have a thing called top. So top 10 means limit 10 in SQLite. From now here, when you're giving the table name, you can see this table name has a particular format. I'm giving one name, then a dot, followed by the name of the table. So what this does is that whatever I'm giving in before the dot, this is known as the schema. So schema, again, like, do not get confused with the schema of like the database. From database design perspective also, we know there is a schema, right, which actually tells you how the tables and everything are designed. But here this term schema means that it's more like a namespace. That is, if you're, let's say, creating tables, or let's say your application that you have created, in the application, you're seeing that the database that you are designing, you can separate your databases into multiple forms. Like, for example, let's say in a single database, you're trying to keep data about your customers, you're trying to keep data about your products, and you're also trying to keep data about your orders. Now, when you are actually working on a very complicated system, you won't really be having a single table for customer or a single table for product or a single table for order. You will have multiple tables for customer, multiple table for products, and all these tables, like let's say one table will contain only product prices. One table will contain only the profit that you are making for a particular product. One table might contain only the similar products which are related to these products. So like this, it can, so if you're actually coding or if you're actually designing applications for the enterprise world, there can be multiple, like even for a single concept, there can be multiple such tables. So in such situations, if you want to group your tables, and not only your tables, you want to group your stored procedures, your functions, your views, everything under a common namespace. So this is what we do. So here sales L2 means that all the tables under sales. So that is exactly what this namespace really stands for. So here I have executed the query and I'm seeing that I'm getting back some result. So here it is. So this is what tells me that this is actually working. All right. Now we were actually going to be talking more about from the perspective of our students and our student databases and everything, or rather, like we will actually be the student databases which we had created earlier. We will try to go ahead and use that itself. So let us go back to the to Newton School's playground, and here you can see. So let me go to the playground and I'll go to the code that we're working on in the last video. Yeah, so this is okay. Let it load. Yeah, so this is the one which we were working on in the last video. So let me go ahead and copy the student table and the department table. Let me try to create the same thing here now. So I've got the department table here. I've got the student table here. Now here we will see some differences on the other patterns. First thing is in SQLite, we had a data type called double. Now something like double does not exist here. There is something called double here. So here the data type is actually float. So you need to make it into float. That's one difference. Probably I'll not do the cascade and everything here. And so the create, everything else remains the same, but one syntax that we changed was from double, we changed it to float. Let me go ahead and run this. Yeah, execution complete. It is working fine and stuff and everything. Now, there's an interesting thing that has happened here is about the indexes. So we know that when you're creating a table, here I have not mentioned any indexes. That is, I have not told that in the student table which row or which attribute should I index on. I did not tell anything like that. However, when you're creating a table in SQL Server, by default, the primary key automatically gets indexed. And what type of index it creates? It creates a clustered index on it. So there is a very nice, helpful command that you have in SQL Server. And that command is actually called execute sp help index. Now, what exactly this command is doing is that this is actually executing a stored procedure. Now, what are stored procedures? Stored procedure, you can think it of as functions. So let's say you have to write 4 or 5 lines of SQL, and you have to execute that 5 or 6 lines of SQL every time, or let's say every time 100 lines of SQL also, and you need to repeat that every time. That is multiple times you need to execute that piece of line. So if you have to, multiple times you have to execute that piece of line. So it is better that I, make it into a method and then call that method. So if you're in Java or if you're in any other programming languages, you would have probably done the same thing. To increase reuse of your code, to increase reusability, you would have taken that piece of common code into a different method and then call the method multiple times instead of repeating those lines. So the same concept can be applied in the world of SQL here also, where we have got a concept of something called stored procedure. So what stored procedure does is, if you have written a particular set of lines, and then you can wrap it into a stored procedure, and then whenever you need to trigger those pieces of line, you can just simply call the stored procedure. So sp help index is a stored procedure which has already been created by SQL for you. Like SQL Server automatically creates this stored procedure for you. That's the reason why I'm able to call that so easily. So here, let me pass the name of the table, which is student. So what this stored procedure actually does is, it tells you whether there are any indexes which are created for the student table or not. And here I can say, yes, an index actually has been created. So here, and see the index type, it is created a clustered index on roll number. So this is exactly what we are talking about, that if you are creating a table for the first time, automatically a clustered index gets created. Now let me copy some data. So I'll be copying the data that we have here. So let me insert some data into the students and the department table. These are all, again, I'm just simply copying the data because there is no need to change anything. SQLite and SQL Server, they have exactly the same thing. So data has been inserted into department. Now, when I'm inserting data into the student table, I'm going to just make some interesting thing. So let me see, I'm going to be inserting in different orders. And the reason for doing that is I'm just trying to play around with the roll numbers. So you see, when I'm inserting data into the student table, I'm inserting roll number 5 first, then roll number 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 6. So it is actually in haphazard order. There is no specific order for it. Probably let me make it even more haphazard. I'll just enter 7 after 6, stuff like that. So I put it into a haphazard order. So now let me go ahead and insert the data here. Data got inserted. Now let me look into the student table. If I go ahead and execute this command in the student table, see the data came up in order of the roll number. So now this is an interesting thing. See, I did not enter them in order, right? I entered student 5 first, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. But when I'm seeing the data, it came automatically in the order of roll number. And yeah, I did not give any order by statement. And had I given any order by statement, probably you would have said that that is why SQL ordered it. But I'm just saying that select start from student, give me all those records that you have for student. So it just gave me back this record. So now the question is, how did it know that? That is, how did it order it automatically by the roll number? And the answer for that is, go ahead and execute my help index once more. And you see, under roll number, a clustered index has been applied. And if you remember correctly, in the last video when we were talking about clustered indexes decides the order in which the data is going to be stored in your table. So when I've said that I'm creating a clustered index on roll number, automatically it is decided that the data when data is being inserted into the table, it will always insert it in order. So when I actually inserted, first I inserted, let's say, roll number 5, then it inserted in the first place. When I inserted roll number 4, then what it did, it shifted the roll number 5 below, and then it inserted roll number 4. Then when I say roll number 3, it again shifted those records and it inserted roll number 3. So whenever I'm trying to enter any record into the student table, it is always going to enter it in the proper order. So this also actually should give you some idea that, so this means now that I've got an index created on the table, every time I have to do an insert, SQL has to do some sort of sorting, or rather SQL has to do some sort of searching to understand where should I enter this record based on the roll number. That is, based on the roll number, it has to either insert it at the top, bottom, or somewhere in the middle, right? So SQL always has to search it. So that means every time I'm trying to insert a record, an extra overhead is being put on SQL where I need to search the table to see where I can insert the particular record. And this is exactly what is meant by when we were talking yesterday, that when you apply indexing, you are actually applying some extra overhead when you're trying to insert, delete, or modify records. Because now SQL has to do some extra work when you're trying to insert record, as a result of which, if there were no indexes on the table, inserting records would have been faster. But however, because we have the index there, so insertion is going to take some time. However, the benefit that we get is, now if we try to search via the roll number, it will be very fast. We'll get back results very fast. So this is what I wanted to talk about indexes. Now let us go ahead and copy the other tables that we had created. So let us create the student course table, and we'll go ahead and create the course table as well. So let me just copy everything here, because I don't think there is anything that we need to change. All right, let's go ahead and put everything here. Okay, it's saying some error. Okay, the error is happening because of the comma. Let us not give the cascading command here directly. No need to do that, because that might cause, some issues in loops and kind of like a self-replenishing loop and stuff like that. Let me go ahead and execute that. Oh, okay, all right, that was a problem. So I think, that is an issue there. So I've created the course code that I gave it only 5 characters, but I'm trying to insert more characters here. So SQL is unhappy with it. So let me just go ahead and delete this data. And now let me try to insert the information. Should work. Yeah, got it working. Now let's try to write some queries here. So it's going to be the same format. So first one, let's try to write a query. Let's try to do a simple join. Let's say we'll do select star only. Let's say from student S, join department D on S dot department ID is equal to D dot dep ID. Let me go ahead and execute this query. Yeah, there it is. You get the record. So yeah, so it is the same experience now. Like whatever exactly the same experience that you were getting on Newton School's editor, you are getting the same experience here. So there is no difference there. Everything got created. Only a few syntaxes you have to make some changes. Now before we go into the next section, I would just like to see whether there are any questions posted in the live chat. No, I don't see any questions posted, so that's fine. All right. So reminder to everyone who's watching the video live that if you have any questions, if you have any queries, please feel free to put that question in the live chat. Or if you're watching the highlights of if you're watching the video later, then you can post your questions either in the YouTube comment section, or if you've already registered for the course from Newton School, you can post your questions there and someone will get back to you. Okay, let me carry on. Okay, the next portion that we'll be looking into is JDBC. So before that, a little bit of theory just to understand what exactly is meant by JDBC. So when you're building applications, now one thing that we have seen so far is that from the databases, whenever we are writing some queries and everything, we actually had to have some tools, right? Like for example, here I needed to have the Azure Data Studio software, or I had to go to something like Newton School Editor and stuff like that. So at every junction, I needed to go to some particular tool and then write the queries there. And the queries also which I'm writing, like select start, from, then inner join and stuff like that, then where and everything. So all those keywords that I was using, those were like a programming language. Like SQL is at the end of the day, it's a programming language, right? So when you are actually writing queries on the database directly, that is, you're interacting with the database directly from tools like Azure Data Studios, SSMS, or some other editors, you need to be proficient with the SQL language. You need to understand what are the clauses, what are the keywords which are present in that language, and then go ahead and use it. Now, when you're actually building an application for a user, like let's say you are building the college, the university application that we're just talking about, when you're actually building applications like that, you cannot expect that, the people who will be using your application, like students or parents of students or teachers who will actually be using your application, you cannot expect them to know the SQL language. So you cannot directly go and tell them, hey, go to the SQL Server or go to Azure Data Studio and go ahead and write your queries and get the record. You cannot do that, right? You need to give them some sort of a user-friendly UI. In that UI, they are going to be, writing something, pressing a button, clicking on something, and based on that, automatically you are going to be going to the database, executing the queries, get the result, and show the result back to them. So which means is that, learning just about SQL is only the first process. If you're into application development, learning about SQL is only the first process. You also need to know how to connect to your databases from an application, and then show the result to the users in a user-friendly way, get data from your users in a user-friendly way, and then post the data back into the database in the proper format, in proper SQL language. Now, generally, a problem that happens is that there are multiple types of SQL databases. Like you have got Oracle, you have got SQL Server, you have got ODBC, then there are like a lot of such SQLite. So there are a lot of such SQL servers which are actually which are present. Like every vendor has a lot of vendors have presented their own SQL databases. And the mechanism and the syntax to connect to each of them is going to be a little different. Like Oracle might say that, hey, you know what, I have exposed a port at this place, and if you want to connect, you need to give the username and password in this particular format. In this, you have to give this information and that information, and based on that, I will allow you to connect to my database. Microsoft SQL Server might have differences. They might say that you need to give me the SQL Server, the SQL login, the database initial catalog, and everything. And based on that, you will be able to connect with it. So what I'm trying to get here is that if you're a developer and let's say you are hopping between multiple companies, or let's say you are going into a project, and in the project that they have said, okay, we have decided to use Oracle, but in some other project they have decided to use, we are going to be using SQL Server, and let's say you're switching between these projects and these two companies and stuff like that, you need to be aware of how to connect to each of these databases. You need to be aware of the internals of how to work on each of these databases, which might be a tedious job for you, which might obviously be very cumbersome, because as a developer, if you need to now know the syntaxes of each and every SQL databases that is present there, it is not very scalable for you, right? That is, you cannot like know each and every database for you to be a good application developer. So that is where in Java we have something called JDBC, which stands for Java Database Connectivity, which actually helps you to So what it does is it has created a standard API. JDBC is giving a standard API to all the developers that using these APIs, and when I say API stands for Application Programming Interface. So what I mean by having a standard API means that if you're using JDBC, JDBC gives you a common set of methods that no matter which database you are using, whether you're using Oracle, ODBC, SQLite, SQL Server, it doesn't matter which database you are using. If you're using JDBC to connect to the database or to get data from the database, to execute a command in the database, you will be using exactly the same method. It is the duty of JDBC to convert those methods into the proper format that you are to the database that you are actually connected to. So for example, so I'll take a look into the diagram. Actually, it will be easier. So here you have got Java application here, and as a Java application, you are only talking to the JDBC APIs. Now, whether you are connected to Microsoft SQL Server or you are connected to Oracle, JDBC will convert your commands, your request, into the format that Microsoft SQL Server understands, or Oracle understands, or ODBC understands, or to whatever kind of database that you are connected to. So if you want to go a little bit in the internals of exactly how JDBC works, so JDBC API is what the Java applications are exposed to. Now JDBC API talks to something known as JDBC Driver Manager. And there is something called JDBC drivers as well. So drivers are the actual people who connect to a specific database to the manager. Okay. What manager does is manager actually, based on what type of connection you need, manager decides which JDBC driver to use. Should I use a SQL Server driver or should I use an Oracle driver? Based on what the application, so from the application, you kind of need to tell it. So when you are actually giving the connection string, and we'll actually look into it in practical forms in practical form itself. So from the application, when you are actually telling JDBC, hey, you know what, I want to connect to the database and the database is hosted at this place. The driver manager will automatically understand based on where it is hosted, whether you are using a Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, ODBC, or some other third-party system. So it is going to load that required JDBC driver. And now every vendor, like let's say Microsoft is a vendor here, Oracle is a vendor here, every vendor is going to have its own JDBC driver package. So there is a jar file that you need to write. Now what is jar and everything, that is beyond the scope of this lecture. But if you want to understand what jar is, so jar, you can actually look into Java packages and you will understand what exactly jar is. So every vendor out there is maintaining their own jar file or their own JDBC file, their own JDBC driver. And that JDBC driver contains the details of how to actually talk to that particular database. So Oracle's JDBC driver knows how to talk to Oracle database. Microsoft SQL Server's JDBC driver knows how to talk with Microsoft SQL Server database. So that JDBC driver from Microsoft SQL is known as MS SQL JDBC driver actually. So JDBC, so now that this JDBC driver knows how to talk or how to translate the request from the application to Microsoft SQL Server. So every time your request comes from a Java application, it goes to the JDBC API, and JDBC API says it has got a standard API. Your Java application is going to be using the same method for connecting to both SQL as well as Oracle. JDBC API calls the JDBC driver management with the request. Like for example, let's say your application has requested, hey, show me records for a particular table. Your JDBC API tells JDBC driver manager, okay, my client wants to know the details of some particular table. JDBC driver manager will detect whether you are connected to a SQL Server, Oracle, or ODBC or something like that. Based on that, it is going to load the driver and it's going to tell the driver, I want you to show me the details of a table. So if it is connected to Microsoft SQL Server, then the JDBC driver will tell SQL Server, hey, show me the tables in its language. If it is connected to Oracle, then based on whatever Oracle syntaxes are available there, the JDBC driver for Oracle is going to tell the Oracle database, give me the details for this particular table. So that's how this whole thing is architected. We will not waste time with it in theory, but we'll go directly into practicals. So one thing again, let us go back into the databases here. So here you can see that when you're actually connecting to a database, like let's say when you're connecting to Microsoft SQL Server, they give you a format of SQL connection. Now, when you're actually connecting to SQL, you need to give a SQL connection string. The connection string contains like details where the SQL is hosted, which database you want to connect to, which username you want to use, other information like encryption, trusting the server certificate, login timeout and stuff like that. We don't need to go into details of all of them. But this is the connection string format if you are trying to connect with JDBC. Okay. Now, the second thing that you need to do is that after you, that is you need to have a driver now. Like if I go back to this diagram, you see that if you're connecting with Microsoft SQL Server, you need to have the proper driver installed in your machine where you are coding. So for that, you need to download the JDBC driver. So here you can see if I just click on this, this is actually going to redirect me to the documentation for Microsoft JDBC driver. So this is the official documentation, and here you can see, okay, how you can actually download the JDBC driver, and then there are some samples also given how you can get connected and everything. So for this example, I have already downloaded my JDBC driver, and my JDBC driver is present in the proper location where it needs to be. So the documentation for all of that is actually given is given here. So interested people can go ahead and take a look into it, that how exactly you can use the JDBC driver in SQL. Anyway, I've downloaded the JDBC driver for SQL Server, so that is done. Next part is, let us go ahead and start the coding. Okay. So for coding, I'll be doing all of my coding into this thing. That is, I'll be doing it in Visual Studio Code. But you are free to use any ID, whichever one makes more sense to you. Like for example, something like Eclipse, BlueJ. They are all very famous, so you can go ahead and use it in any of these places. But here I will be using this. That is, I'll be using Visual Studio Code to do it. So one thing that I've done here is, you have to understand, I've created a Maven project. So Maven, so I've created a JavaScript project here actually, and this one has been created using Maven. So Maven is actually like a dependency resolution, a dependency resolver. Like if you have a lot of dependencies into your system, you have, let's say you have dependency on stuff like JDBC. Like JDBC itself is a package, right? Like your JDBC for SQL Server, those are all packages. Like if you have dependencies on that, or if you want to use some other third-party dependencies, like let's say someone else have written a utility Java application and you want to use that application into your code. So for that, you need to be dependent on other applications. So Maven is a particularly a good a dependency resolution, which actually downloads and it keeps all the dependencies that you need to run your particular project. Okay. So now that I've created, let's say I've created a Maven project and everything. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to add okay, let me just go ahead and run this. I've created an app.java. So let's see if I'm running this. So this is the terminal where I have to run. So in Visual Studio Code, you can just press F5, or you can click on run and then click on start debugging, and this is going to start debugging and write and execute your code. So it's a simple program that I wrote that is just going to give me hello world, nothing else. It's a very simple program that has been written so far. So nothing, it's not connecting to any database or anything like that. So we can leave that. Now, the first thing that we need to do is, so remember here, we were actually downloading the JDBC driver. So you have to download the JDBC driver and install it in your system. Now, after you have installed the JDBC driver for SQL Server, you need to tell your project, right? Hey, you know what? I have a dependency on the JDBC driver for SQL. So the question is, how do I do it? And this is where Maven comes into picture, because Maven is a dependency resolution. Maven can resolve your dependencies, right? So whatever project you are writing, and in that project, if you have dependency on something like JDBC driver for SQL, you need to tell that to Maven that I need to be, my project is dependent on that. So bring those packages here. So to do that, you need to go to something called pom.xml. So POM stands for Project Object Model. So this XML file is where you actually tell all the details about the project that you are using. Like for example, things like group ID. Group ID tells like which organization is building this project. Artifact ID tells you like what is the name of this project that you are building. Then you've got the version of this project. URL and everything is like if you have got a project URL, like for example, let's say if you're coding from Newton School, you can give the link to Newton School website here and stuff like that. The interesting thing where we were more interested in something known as the dependency section. So in the dependency section, you actually tell which are the packages in Java that you're dependent on. Like for example, here you're seeing that you are dependent on something called JUnit. So JUnit is actually a Java package which is used for writing unit tests. So you are dependent on this. So when you're dependent on something like that, you need to actually give all the details, like what is the group ID or the group who was building that project, what is the name of the artifact that they have released, and on which version you are dependent on. So here, let me go ahead and add another dependency section, because I need to now go ahead and add the group ID, or rather I need to go ahead and add the dependency for my SQL, right? So let me go ahead and do that. So for doing something like that, here I need to give the group ID, I need to give the artifact ID, I need to give the version to which I'm dependent on. So actually when you are downloading, so let me go ahead and show you that. So when we are downloading the SQL Server, in the documentation, if you see in the documentation, you will actually be given like, hey, like what are the Maven dependencies and everything that you have to connect to. So I'm not going details into it because this is something that you can find out on your own. But when you're actually giving the dependencies, you need to give this is information, group ID, artifact, and version as to where your JDBC SQL Server is hosted and everything. So let me go ahead and do a little bit of copy paste here, and let me explain what is it. So group ID I'm saying. So what exactly this means is that under com.microsoft.sql server, you've got an artifact called MSSQL JDBC, and use the version 9.2.1.jre11. So this is a version that you need to use. So here you're telling Maven that I am dependent on this particular package. Now, one thing is that you need to ensure that this package, whatever package you're calling about, this package is already installed in your device. Or if you're writing this code in a VM, you need to ensure that that whatever package you're referring to, that is actually already installed. So here I've already downloaded the JDBC driver. I did not, that's the reason why I did not show the whole place, but I've already downloaded JDBC driver. But if you're doing it for the very first time, you need to download the JDBC driver. And when you're downloading a JDBC driver, it will actually tell you in which folder you need to download and keep it, because your JavaScript project has got a concept of class path. Java project has got a concept of class path, and from the class path is where it actually leads that whether this particular package is present or not. So here this one I've done. So this is done. Now let me go back and try to write some simple and code. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to import a few things. So we need to import, let's say, java.sql.connection. So these are again like these are or let me just do something like import java start, so that let me import everything that is available there. So again, what the import statement does is it is actually importing some classes that is exposed in a particular package. So when we added a dependency to this package, Microsoft the SQL Server, a lot of packages actually automatically came to you. And java.sql is a package which is available in your JDK itself. So the Java development kit which you downloaded. So if you're running Java in your application, you need to download Java. You need to have JDK running in your system, right? So java.sql is a package which is already available to you. So when I said import java.sql.start, it is importing all the classes and all this information that you need in your that you need to connect to SQL. So let us have the connection string first. So I'm going to be creating a static string. Let's say I'll call it as connection string. And now here, if you see the connection string, where am I going to get it? So since I am connecting to a database which is hosted on Microsoft Azure, I can go to my Azure portal and I can look for the connection string, especially for JDBC. I can go ahead and copy this and I can keep it here. So yeah, this is done. So here is the thing, but yeah, one quick thing to note here is that if you see, your password is actually empty here. Like you need to actually give a proper password. That is, without the password, you will obviously not be able to connect to this, right? So this password is something which is known to me. That's the reason why I will be just copying the password and giving it here. But yeah, when you're writing an actual enterprise application, you're not supposed to give the password like this. Your password is something that should be secret, that is secret, and you should be keeping it somewhere safe. But anyway, here since it's a demo database, that's the reason why I put the password directly in the configurations here. But ideally, you're not supposed to be giving the password here. You should be giving the password in some places like Azure Key Vault, HashiCorp, and stuff like that. So those are the things where you can actually keep your password. Anyway, I have got the connection done. Now let me try to write a method which is where I'm going to be creating the connection. Let me call this a private static. And this will have a return type of something called connection. So this connection is something which I've actually got from when I imported java.sql. So here I'm saying, let's say create connection. So now these are the formats. So the way how you're actually going to be creating the connection is, so you need to do something like, let's say connection is equal to, you need the driver manager, and the driver manager class, you need to call a method called get connection, and you need to pass here either the URL username or the password, or I can simply pass the connection string directly here. And it is the duty of the driver manager. So driver manager, again, like if you need to understand what the driver manager is, this is a driver manager. So the Jdbc APIs are talking to the driver manager, actually, as I said. So to the driver manager, I'm passing the connection string, and based on the connection string, it is going to decide whether, or it will detect whether it is a SQL Server connection string or it is a Oracle Server connection string. And if it is SQL Server connection string, then it is automatically going to look for the Jdbc for SQL driver. And this is what I did here. MS SQL Jdbc, it is going to look for this driver, whether this driver is installed in the machine or not. So if the driver was not installed in the machine, you would have said that no driver found, you would have been given an error. But since you've got it installed, it is good and fine. So here I'm just, that's what I'm doing. I'm just getting the connection. Let me go ahead and return the connection. Nothing to be done. And again, like JavaScript is giving a lot of errors and everything because it is saying that there can be exceptions if you try to write the code like this. So here I'll be just catching an exception. Now again, try catch blocks, what they are, that is again, you should be aware of it. E.print stack trace. So, and I'm going to just return null here, that in case there's an exception. So what this try catch block is exactly meaning is that while I'm trying to create a connection, if there was an error, it is going to go into this block, and here I'm going to be printing what is the error. I'm going to be returning back a null because I could not create a connection, so there is no point in me returning the connection. Okay, so the first statement is done, and now let us try to go ahead and get the connection from here. So I'll say again, let's say connection, create connection. So connection has been created. Very good. Now we need to write a query, or that is we need to write a query, or we need to connect to the actual database now. So the question is, how do I do that? So for that, there are certain syntaxes that you need to follow. So first thing that you need to do is you need to create a statement. So statement is nothing, it kind of represents a query. Okay, so I say statement connection dot connection, or maybe let's call a statement. Statement is equal to connection dot create statement. Okay, so this one does nothing. This one simply creates a statement and nothing else. Now you need to tell the statement to execute a particular query. So let us actually go ahead before you can execute the query into a database and see. Okay, so let us go ahead and execute this query itself. Okay, this is a very simple query. Select start from student S and this department. So let me try to execute this query in Java now. So before that, let me try to write the query somewhere. Let's say I'll say string query is equal to, and let me go ahead and copy paste this query. Again, like let's keep everything in a single line so that we don't mess up anything. String query. Okay. And here I'm going to say statement dot execute query, and here I need to give the query, and this is the query I'm giving. So what this line is going to do is this line is going to execute whatever query you are giving into the database that I've given here. So first I'm creating a connection to this database. So create connection is doing nothing but it's telling the driver manager, please connect to this database. After I've connected to the database, I'm creating a statement and I'm saying execute the statement. And where did I create the statement from? I created the statement from this connection itself. That is this connection to this database itself. So when I am executing a query, whatever string I'm given, when I'm executing that query, this query is going to get executed into this database directly. So what we are doing here, like we're just highlighting this and we're just clicking on run. I am doing the same thing, but instead of doing it from a specialized tool like Azure Data Studio or something like that, I am doing that from a Java application. Now, one thing that you should question here is, so when I'm doing an execute query, when I did an executed query here, I got back some sort of result here, right? So now the question is, okay, how am I going to get back the result here? Because execute query is going to return back a result, right? So that is where the next thing comes into the picture, which is known as result set. So whenever you execute a query, Java takes that information, takes this table and converts it or wraps it into something known as a result set. So this is all the doing of a JDBC. So JDBC is actually doing all that, and it is keeping it is taking the data and it is keeping that in the result set. So it is kind of result set. You can think it is an abstraction on the table that you are getting here. So result set represents this table itself, but in a programmatic world. So now that you have got the result set, now the question is, how do I print the result set? So the result set is actually kind of an enumerator. So enumerator means that it. So what it means is, while result.next means it is this will return that whether there is a row available to you or not. That is so each result set, it is actually a collection of rows, right? Like a table is what? Table is nothing but a collection of rows. So result.next is going to give you the next row which is present, the next row which is available. And when you're calling it for the very first time, it is simply going to give you back the first. It is going to give you back the first row. So here you can see that in the description also it is written that the next statement, it moves the cursor forward from one row to the other row. So at the very beginning, it was pointing to a null cursor. It was pointing to a null row. It was not pointing to anything. When I call .next for the very first time, it is actually going to now point to the proper row. And this method, result.next, it actually returns back a boolean which tells you whether there is a row available or not. So see, there are only 12 rows which are available, right? When I'm executing a query like this. So after 12 iteration, that is after 12 times I've called result.next. If I again try to call result.next, it will actually be pointing to a blank row. It will be pointing to a null row. In that situation, this guy is going to return back a false. It is not going to, it is going to return back a false. So that is when my loop is going to end. So here I'm iterating through all the results. So I've seen while result.next, while it is true. Now let me try to get back the result. So if I actually execute this query, see, I'm getting the roll number in the first column, student in the second column, address in the third column, gender in the fourth column, age in the fifth column, and stuff like that. So since roll number is there in the first column, now if I need to get the roll number, what is the syntax for that? Int roll is equal to result dot, now roll number is an integer, right? So when I do result, you can see that I'm doing all these things like get string, get integer, get long, get float, get row, and all stuff like this. So if I say get int, it means I'm trying to get an integer, but and it is quite, and you have to tell me that which column. So I give column 1, because here if I see in the result, column 1 is actually an integer. This is where the roll number is situated. So int roll equal to result dot get int 1. It means that give me the integer which is present in the first column. Let me do something else also. Let me do string name. And when I'm trying to get the name, so for name, what I need to do? I need to do a get string now. And get string, and where is the name exactly coming? Name is coming in the second column. So that's something, get string 2. Let me do one more. So I'm going to be doing the department also. And department again, result, department is also string. So I'll do get string. But now what is the column index? Department is in this column, right? So I've got column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10th column has department. So here I'm going to say get string 10. So this is going to give me the string that is present in the 10th column. Now that I've done this, I'm just going to be printing it. That's it. System.out.println. And here, let's say I'll be printing first the roll number. Followed by, let's say, the student name, followed by the department that the student belongs to. Simple program I've done. Again, they're giving me all these red squigglies and everything is because I haven't put it on the try catch block, so that I'll not be able to catch those unhandled exceptions. So here also doing the same thing actually, whatever I did with the catch statement here, nothing very fancy. Try statement, no return is needed. Done. So now let us go ahead and trigger this. Let us go ahead and run this function. Let us run this product. Again, I press F12, F5, sorry. So here in the console, you can see it is getting, it is trying to now execute this particular Java file. So initially it's going to take some time because it is trying to connect to the database, and here it is. It has been able to connect to the database. It picked up all the details and it is printing that. So that's exactly what we wanted to do. That is, we wrote a Java application. From the Java application, we are now connecting into the database, and from the database, we are picking up results and we are giving the result back to the user. So we will do one more query. We will do a little complicated query this time. So let's assume that we now want to print. We want to get a student roll number from the user. So the user needs to enter a name, a roll number of a student, and based on the roll number of the student, we will now print all the courses that the student has taken, the department that the student belongs to, and which the courses that the student has taken, which department does the courses being offered by. So let us first try to write the query in our here itself. So what I need here is, let me just give a select start. I need to know the student details. That is, I need to know which department the student belongs to and what courses the student has taken and which departments are offering that course. That is what the query is. Now, based on all our SQL query knowledge that we have gathered across all the previous videos, that should be easy. So I first need the student table, which I need to be inner joining with the department table. What is D? Sorry. And we are joining it on s.department id is equal to d.dept id. So that's how they're connected. So instead of D, let us call it as SD, and I will know why I'm calling it as SD. And again, I'm going to be doing another inner join. And this time, if I need to get the courses, for getting the courses, I need to join the student table with the student course table. So if you remember the tables that we're using, student course table is the bridge table between course table and the student table, because student and course has got a many-to-many relationship. So I'm going to be doing an inner join on, let's say, student course. Let me call it as an SC. And here I write where SC dot student role is equal to S dot roll number. Again, I need to do another inner join, and this time I'm going to be joining with the course table. Sorry, course table, and I'll call it a C. and I say where c.course ID is equal to sc.course ID. Another last join that I need to do, I need to join the course to the department table. So let's say department and call it as CD. And since I'm doing two inner joins with department, and we discussed about this, I think in one of the previous videos we discussed about this, that you can do inner join on the same table, but you can join it with a different parameter. So here I'm going to be joining with cd dot department on cd dot department ID is equal to course, that is c dot department. And let's say the information that I need is, I need the roll number, I need the name, I will, let's say I'll take the gender, I'm going to take the CGPA, I'm going to be taking the department, so sd dot let's say department code, sd dot department name, sorry, department name. Then I'm going to be taking the courses. So courses, I will be taking in the course code, course name, and if I need to know which department is offering that course, that is CD. So SD was connected, the department was connected to student with SD alias, and the department is connected to the course using the CD alias. So when I say CD dot course code, this essentially means I'm getting which course that student has taken. Okay, sorry, CD dot department code, my bad. Let's go ahead and execute this. Okay, so this is giving me result back for all the student, but here I say that I need to know the details for only one particular student based on the roll number. So how do I do that? How do I filter it? Easy, giving the where statement. So where I say where s dot roll number is equal to, I need to give the roll number. Let's say I want student roll number 1. Execute this. I get the data for student 1. If I give it for student 2, I'll get that for student 2, exactly how it is supposed to be. So it is working as fine. Now we need to execute this query in our Java application. So we know how to do it. It is actually easy. So we have got the query here. So let me delete the query here, and I'll be writing the query. Let's keep them this one now. Let's copy the query. Now this is going to be a little difficult because you have to be careful as to how since it is on multiple lines actually. So for the sake of making it to speed it up, I'm going to be copying it and I'm going to be pasting it. Is formatted. Yeah, it is exactly the same query, but here we are putting but here we are just putting the quotation marks and everything at the right place. Now here you can see I need something called a student roll number, because see, here I was hard coding the student roll number as 1, right? But in this case, from my Java application, I need to take the input from the user. I need to ask the user for which student do you want to see the details. So the student roll number is something that I need to take an input for. And in Java, one of the best ways to take input is using something called scanner. So let me go ahead and do that. Yeah, so let me create a scanner first. System.in here, right? And now I need to take an input. So let me just do a system.out.print, and I'm going to say enter the student roll number. Okay. And int roll number will be equal to, let's say, input dot next int. Okay, all right, so this is done. So I've taken the query, I've created the query as per whatever record the student, the data has been inserted. Now, yeah, I am doing the same thing, that is I'm executing the result and everything, but here the other things will change a little bit, because you see I've got the roll number, student name, gender, CGPA, department code, and everything. They have been printed in different orders and everything. So roll number was fine, name was fine. Next that I wanted was the gender. So gender will be in, let's assume it is coming in 3rd one, and CGPA is coming in 4th. For CGPA again, I need something like a double here. So double CGPA is equal to, let's say, result dot. You have got something called get double, so that is going to give you back here. So we're done here. So double CGPA, we've got gender, we have got CGPA, and the other thing that we need is, let's say we need the department code or the department name. So the department here is not get string 10, but department is in the 6th column, right? So department will be, let's say, 6. And I'll also take, let's say, string department code will be equal to result of get string 5 in the 5th column, right? In the 5th column, I'm getting the department code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, done. Now for the courses, same thing, let's say. So course code will be result of the, at the 7th position, I got the course code. At the 8th position, I have the course name. And at the 9th position, I have the course department. So yeah, so 9th position, I have the course department. 8th position, the course name. And in the 7th position, the course code. All right, that is done. Now, one thing that I would like to do here is see the name, gender, CGP, like this information here. This is actually getting repeated, right? Multiple times, because obviously I'm getting information only for one particular student. I'm not getting information for multiple students, right? So this information is getting repeated. So there is no point in printing this information multiple times. I can print this information only for the very first time and I should be done with. So how do we do that? So let me just create a counter here, let's say. And we'll call it as, let's say, the course counter. Let's start with 0. So only when the course, or make it 1, only when the course counter is 1, at that point of time, I do need to really print, I need to get the roll number and everything, right? So let's do that. If course counter is equal to 1, only when the course counter is equal to 1, I need this information. And then I need to print this information as well. I'll be needing to printing this information as well. So how do we print this information? Again, same here. Let me pull this data guy. Here, I printed all the things here, and now let me also print the department of that particular student. Only like this. So the department of the student, where do you have the department? I've got the department value of the department. I'm not printing department code, CGPA and everything, but we can print that also if needed. Probably here I'll print the CGPA. So you can see what the CGPA of the student is. Let's go ahead and print actually the department code also, just for the sake of completion. I'll be printing that within a bracket because I don't want to show it. I want to hide it, kind of a thing. Department code is done. All right, now the courses. Now the courses is something that we need to print. So for the courses, let us see. System.out.println. So what are the things we need to print? We need to print the course name. Oh yeah, let's print the course name. In the bracket, let us try to print the course code as well. And here we'll be printing the department which is offering the course. Print something here so that it becomes a little easier. Courses, so the student is undertaken. Okay. All right, so we should be good here. Okay, we need to close the input. That's why input is fine. So input is a disposable class, so we need to dispose of that object. Scanner is a disposable class actually, not input really. So close. All right, we're done. Let's go ahead and run this. Let me clear the screen here. And unless there are any errors, it should work fine. Okay, it's trying to build it. Let's see. Okay, enter the student roll number. Let me enter student roll number 1 and I press enter, and there it is. Okay, so okay, that's a problem. The thing was a course counter. I forgot to update it. That's the reason why it got printed multiple number of times. Okay, input should be outside. I made a mistake here. Course counter, sorry, course counter plus plus. Okay, let's go ahead and execute that again. The formatting should be better now. One, yeah, much better. So I've got student number 1 who carries a CGPA of 9.1, belongs to this department, and these are the courses that this student has undertaken. Let's write that. Let's trigger that again, and this time we'll do it for a different student. We'll do it for student number 2. And there you go. And with that, we are done. We are done with this particular course about SQL and database management systems. So this was the last this was the last topic, that is how we can, and probably one of the most interesting topics, where actually whatever knowledge that we had learned about how to write SQL queries and everything, how actually it all comes together, and how we can use Java to as a programming language. Now you can use any other programming language like C Sharp, C, C++. They all have their own ways of connecting to a SQL database. So we learned about Java. That's one of the most popular programming languages that you have there. You use Java to connect to the SQL databases using Jdbc connections, and then we executed queries directly using on the SQL Server, and then we printed those results. And now here you see that we are getting the you are also interacting with this user. Your user is actually interacting with the database now. Your user is entering which roll number you want. Based on that, you are coding to actually get that information from the database and showing that information back to the user. So those are the kind of interaction that your user is able to have now using this particular app. So before I end it, I just like to see whether there are any whether there are any questions available or not on live chat. There aren't any questions. All right, no problem. So thank you everyone for being a part of this particular course. Everyone who was able to join, everyone who's watching the video. I do hope that you got to learn something from this course, that it gave you a good idea about what exactly database management system is, and what is SQL, and how you can write queries in SQL, how you can use a Java application and then connect to SQL and then do some operations there and stuff like that. So I do hope that this course was productive for all of you. For any comments of the course or for any feedback on, you can put it in the comment section. If you're registered in the Newton School side, you can go ahead and fill out the feedback there. So once again, thank you everyone for being part of this course. Thank you, and probably have a nice day.